bill, or he did not have the opportunity to veto the bill. It goes right from the legislature to the ballot.
That's correct.
Yeah. So on the ballot, then, what percentage of yes votes does there have to be in order to have the amendment adopted into our Constitution?
Well, simply put, whoever has more votes wins. With that said, anyone who votes and decides to not cast a vote on this amendment, that will count as a no vote. So essentially, there needs to be a majority of votes cast that say yes of all of the voters. So voters who don't vote on this but do vote, that counts as a voter. So a 50% plus one of all the voters have to say yes.
Okay. So if you're voting for a U.S. Senator, you're counted, which would be, well, probably the highest interest would be for president in 2012. Yep. If you vote for president and U.S. Senator, the two highest interest races in any given state, then you have to weigh in to make your voice heard if you are in favor of it, and if you don't, then you have a sense of pocket veto, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what's happened in other states on this issue, either through elections or similar type amendments? What's going on around the country?
Well, I think the most recent is New York, and the New York legislature that just passed same-sex marriage, and so it is now legal for same-sex couples to get married in New York, and so that was such a great victory, and that was a victory of Republicans, of Democrats, of labor, of business. There were a large amount of CEOs that signed a letter that was printed in the New York Times, urging their legislators to pass this. So that's the most recent example of same-sex marriage in the news. Some other states, Iowa, and then constitutionally, the constitutional amendments have happened in, most recently, Maine and California, where they were both approved.
In Iowa, there was a Supreme Court case.
Correct.
For Iowa, where they ruled in favor of same-sex marriage. I don't recall the precise case or the precise ruling, but it was a unanimous decision of the Iowa Supreme Court, and 3 of their justices were up for re-election last year, and they were defeated.
Correct.
By the folks marshalling opposition and being well funded, as we've talked about. So we can expect some interest here.
Well, absolutely, and again, there's an example of all of this out-of-state money that pours in for the special interest from National Organization of Marriage. They've done it in every state, and they're certainly going to do it in Minnesota as well.
Okay. So let's get back to the emotional side here for a moment.
Sure.
My wife and I have been married for 50 years.
Congratulations.
This year, and I hear opponents of gay marriage say that gay marriage will threaten the traditional type of marriage. So my question is, what's threat? How will banning gay marriage, affect my marriage to my wife for 50 years?
Well, that's a good question, Dan, and I'm not sure. I don't think it would. If I were to get married tomorrow, I don't know how my marriage would affect your marriage at all. As a matter of fact, shortly after the New York legislature voted to allow same-sex couples to get married, a friend of mine in New York sent me an email that read, New York passes same-sex marriage. Wow, my marriage is intact. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
So, it's an argument that doesn't have any teeth to it. How my marriage would affect your marriage, the answer, it wouldn't affect your marriage whatsoever. It would encourage marriage, it would encourage family in Minnesota, and that's what we need to be doing.
With the vast number of people seeking to get out of traditional marriage through divorce, I mean, to me, it's encouraging that other people want to get into marriage, even though it's not of the traditional type. I think I would view it as a reaffirmation of marriage, and, rather than a threat.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I mean, our campaign is Minnesotans United for All Families because this is about marriage. It's about families. This is going to be better for the state of Minnesota.
Now, okay, now back to some legal matters now. The United States General Accounting Office has documented that there are over 1,000 federal benefits and protections acquired by civil marriage to heterosexual couples that are not available to same-sex couples. So let's explore a couple of those.
Certainly.
What happens to Social Security benefits for a gay couple when one partner passes away?
Well, that's a good question. You know, here in Minnesota, we have an organization called Project 515, and they have identified 515 pieces of Minnesota legislation that discriminates against gay couples. And so what happens to Social Security benefits? Well, it all depends. You know, couples try very hard to make sure that there's documentation, for instance, in order, paperwork filled out, documented and witnessed, and attorneys are involved. But Dan, so often what happens, there's a horrible accident, and the ambulance driver says to someone significant, you know, to their partner, "You can't get in the ambulance," or a funeral director tells someone, "No, you're not coming into the funeral home to make these horrible decisions at the end of life for your partner because you're not married." And so what happens to Social Security benefits? It can depend. It can always depend. Marriage is the one way that we know that will solve that and ensure that same-sex couples have those rights and protections.
So when a person is approaching death and is in the hospital, been there, done that with a parent, a same-sex partner may not be allowed to have to be at the bedside, have a bedside vigil, so to speak.
Sadly, it certainly happened. It certainly happened where one's partner is turned away because they're not the legal definition of family.
Yeah.
Sadly. And again, we find these horrible situations happening at the worst possible times, at death, during tragic accidents, for instance. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and I hope that we can start to move away from that.
So part of this is about honoring choices. And you know, what does one partner, or what does a couple wish, you know, and to honor choices. I want my partner by my bedside, you know, and I want my partner to make such and such type of arrangements, or wish to be cremated, or do not wish to be cremated, or whatever. So it's all about honoring choices.
Well, it is, and sadly, again, they're not always honored. These choices are not always honored. It's sometimes not intentional, but sometimes by the letter of the law, these choices are not honored. You know, we've seen domestic partnerships and civil unions in some places, and while they go a long way, they're simply not a substitute for marriage.
Mm-hmm. So this is a divisive issue, and people have a variety of opinions across the spectrum. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking at the state fair that was concluded last summer now. Every year, you know, one of the things I like to do is to do the survey at the House Information Office and the Senate Information Office, and they have a wide variety of issues that people are always asked about. So it's informal. It is unscientific. It's not so many people of every age or geographic background, but it's very large number of people. And in 2011, there were 12,500 people who completed the survey. One of the questions was about gay marriage. What did the survey find?
So the survey asked the question that will be on the ballot, interestingly enough. So I just want to be clear that the folks who answered the survey actually answered the question that they will have to answer when they go to vote in November of 2012. We were thrilled that over 60% actually of those who voted in the House Information Survey said that they would vote no. They voted no in the survey, over 60%. And so that's very encouraging for us. I think that it was just over 30% said they would vote yes, and 5 or 6 or 7% didn't vote on that question. If that were the November 12th ballot, all of those votes would have been considered no votes. And so, while it's encouraging, we too understand that it wasn't scientific.
Yeah.
But 12,500 Minnesotans did weigh in on it, and were very clear.
Now different faith backgrounds of people in this country have different opinions on gay marriage. And in a previous life, I was a history teacher for 35 years and always a student of history. I recall our mainline churches splitting over the issue of slavery, even within the same denomination, so that the Northern Baptists were opposed to slavery, the Southern Baptists were in favor of it, the Northern Methodists were opposed to slavery, and the Southern Methodists. This program today is not really the appropriate forum for extensive religious discussion. But do you want to say a word or two on the faith issue and the diversity of opinion, perhaps?
Well, I'll simply say that last Monday night at Hennepin, at the big church on Hennepin, we had 506 persons of faith show up for an initial organizing meeting, and they represented congregations, that Jewish congregations, Methodist, Episcopalians, Lutherans, Catholics, UCC, across the span of religious sects and denominations. And so I don't want to turn this into a religious conversation either, but we do know that people of faith, we have significant amounts of people of faith that are supporting our work.
Okay. And before we run out of time, I do want to have a question for our viewers. Do you have a story to relate about same-sex marriages involving you or your family, your neighbor, coworker? If so, go to the website of the Minnesotans United for All Families, mnunited.org, or you can call Minnesota State Retiree Council at 651-227-7647 in the metro area, or in greater Minnesota, you can call 1-800-652-9004. We would like to hear from you. What is your story? Donald, you and I were both born and raised in other states, and we are Minnesotans by choice.
By choice.
I made my choice over a half century ago. Okay, there are many reasons why I chose Minnesota. Weather was not one of them for me. But one of the attractions of living in Minnesota is the culture of Minnesota nice. How does banning gay marriages fit into Minnesota nice?
Well, I certainly don't think it does. Next week will be 10 years that I chose to live in Minnesota, and I didn't choose it for the weather either. I think it really comes down to what the governor said on that Saturday night, that this is un-Minnesotan. In Minnesota, we don't treat people this way. We treat people like we want to be treated ourselves. It really is as simple as the golden rule.
Okay. Donald McFarland, campaign spokesperson for Minnesotans United for All Families. Our time is just about up, and we're thankful to hear your perspective on the issue, and we think this is an item of concern for any worker, retired or active, person building trades wearing a hard hat, industrial worker in a factory, nurse in a hospital, teacher in a classroom. We should all care about the marriage amendment. Thanks to the entire crew for making this program possible. And Donald, we hope to hear from you again.
Thank you, Dan.
And to our viewers, I say thank you as well. And please join us for discussions of other public policy issues affecting union retirees. Voices of Experience is brought to you by the Minnesota State Retiree Council, afl-cio.